Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys had a good weekend. Welcome to Monday, the 30th of March. So today's plan is to go through the exam. Just a quick note about the scheduling. And so, well, it looks like we got 7 people. Let me wait a minute before I talk about that for a second. Once we get a few more people on here, then I'll discuss that. All right, so as I was going to say, with regards to the scheduling, it'll essentially still be the same. The schedule that was on Canvas, we're going to adhere to that, at least for now. If things change and I need to switch it up a little bit, I'll post an announcement to the dashboard, to your guys' dashboard. But for now, we'll just stick with it. So for today, it was going to be a review of the exam. That's what we'll do. But then Wednesday is when we kind of first start getting into the sort of remote teaching side of it. And so scheduled for Wednesday is section 2.7 and 3.7. And so what I'm going to do, because one of the issues that we could potentially have is if you guys have a question, let's say you have a question on section 2.7, number 1. As you guys know from the in-class days, your numbers are different from what I see on my end. And so the way we'll handle that is that I'll post a discussion thread. I'll call it whatever, homework 2.7, 3.7 questions. And if there's one that you want to see worked on Wednesday, just post a screenshot of that question. And then you can kind of look as well. If somebody else has already posted question number 1, you don't need to keep posting it, 10, 11, 12 times over. I already know that that's one of the questions you guys want to see. But at least that way, then I can see those numbers and we can work those, your specific questions. Otherwise, it might be hard trying to type it into the comments section to get it to work right. And we'll see if that doesn't work, if that becomes an issue. We do have other options like WebEx and things like that. If we have to switch to that, then, so be it. I want to do ultimately what's going to work out best for you guys. And if that's the method that we have to go, then that's fine. All right. As for this exam, score was pretty good. Average was an 84. One thing that I will mention, though, with regards to a little difference in the future exams. So on this exam, you guys had 2 tries and you had 2 hours to complete each try. For exam 3 and for the final, that's going to change up a little bit. So first of all, you're only going to have 1 attempt. I wanted to give you guys 2 attempts just because of the formatting issues and things like that. And there were a couple formatting issues. And I will try to make sure that that does not happen in the future exams. So you're only going to have 1 attempt at it. However, there's not going to be a timer set for the exam. So you'll be given that window of opportunity, probably the same thing again. Maybe, probably the same thing. I'll give you guys a 24-hour window, at least for exam 3. The final will probably be a smaller time window. But there won't be a timer on it. So you won't have to worry about it logging you off or kicking you out or something like that. And then you're not able to get back in and get your answers submitted. So that'll be a little bit different in terms of the exam itself. Only 1 attempt and then the unlimited time, quote unquote, unlimited. Also, to handle some of that formatting issue, I will probably have some calculator questions on there. So instead of writing like -1 plus square root of 2, what is that answer as a decimal to 2 decimal places? And that's what I'll have you enter into the system. So that's that. So any questions on any of that? Remember, if you guys have a question, just do that. Put in like 3 exclamation points, because that you can do pretty quickly. And that'll be an indication to me to hold on for a second. Like I know you're writing a question. Let me stop and wait until you get your question typed in. Otherwise, I might have moved on to something else, and I don't want to have to backtrack and then you miss something else while you're typing the question. So if you do have a question, just type that. Otherwise, we'll kind of start moving on with the exam. Now, as of right now, it's my understanding you guys cannot see the exam. You can't go back in and see the questions. So I'm going to talk to the Office of the OIT, Office of Information Technology, and see if there's a setting that I can change that would allow you guys to go back and actually see the test. Because I still want you, just like your in-class exams, I still want you to have access to them as review for exam 3 or for the final exam. Because I know you don't have that right now. I'll probably try to go through this a little bit quicker. I will put the questions on the board and the answers so that at least if you want to have them as a review for later on, if for some reason OIT tells me, well, no, you can't give them access after the fact, at least you'll still have the questions that you can go back and do if you want. So let me ask too, I did ask in a discussion thread for some feedback and I did get a few responses and I appreciate that. But how about here today? So I know you guys, you didn't see the discussion thread, you didn't answer. As far as the concept questions go, did you guys find that to be helpful? Was it more of, oh, geez, here's something else I have to learn now? Again, in the perfect world, I did that so that once you did do the calculations questions of, let's say, finding the domain, it's like, well, no, you already knew what you were supposed to be looking for. And hopefully it was a help, but if it's not, then I want to know that too. So any feedback as of now with regards to the concept questions? No feedback. All right, well, let's go on with the exam questions here. All right, so it was helpful. Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, in my first class, most of them that were online did say that it was helpful for them as well. So I'll probably do a similar idea on exam 3. Obviously not maybe 20 of them because I had to play catch up from the beginning of the semester with those. But any of this new material that we start covering, I'll probably have some concept questions on that. And as we, do those videos, the video classrooms, I'll kind of point out like, all right, this is what, okay, good. But yeah, I'll point out like, all right, this will probably be a concept question on the exam so that to highlight it or something. All right, the first question on the exam was, which of the following should be of concern when finding domains? And there were 2 of the options listed that we need to be concerned with. Is there a denominator and is there an even root radical? So those are always going to be our 2 concerns. Now, before the 3rd exam, we're going to have a 3rd one when we start getting into logarithms. That'll be another concern. So this will probably be an updated question on the 3rd exam. So what are we concerned with domains? It'll be denominator, even root radical, and then also the 3rd one will now be, is there a log function? But for now, you don't have to worry about that too much. More so just the other 2 right now. All right. The second question is if there's an even root radical, how do we find its domain? 90% of you guys got this right, so that's good. And we set the radicand greater than or equal to 0. The next one, only 69%, so that's not very good. If a function has a denominator, how do we find its domain? The domain is all the values that do not make the denominator equal to 0. So some of you had domain is all real numbers. Some had set the function equal to 0. No, the correct answer would be the domain is all the values that do not make the denominator equal to 0. And again, if you have any questions, like I said, just do the exclamation point so I know, all right, hold on, somebody's typing a question, and then I'll hold up. Next question, if a function's a quadratic, how do we find its domain? Well, if it's a quadratic, the domain is all real numbers. We don't have any issues there. 97% got that right, so that's good. If possible, can we add or subtract radicals? Yes, it is possible. 90% of you guys got this right, so that's good as well. I don't know if I measured or not. So average was an 84, so that's very good. But how do we add or subtract radicals? The roots have to be the same. The radicands have to be the same. And again, that was 92% overall correct. 100% got the next question, which is if an expression has 4 terms, what method should we use? Factor by grouping. So that's absolutely correct, factor by grouping. The next one, if an expression has two terms with a minus sign between them, what should we consider? Difference of squares. 97% got that right. If expanding by binomial, how many terms will we end up with? N plus 1 is the correct answer there. 97% correct. 97% of you guys got that right. If expanding the method binomial, what methods can we use? 82% got this right. Just multiply it out, use Pascal's triangle or binomial theorem. Those are our three different options that we know of. If we expand it, what do we know about the exponents of A and B? 79%, so that's not very good here. 79% said that the sum of the exponents is N, and that's what the correct answer would be. And then next, 87%, can a binomial coefficient ever be equal to 0? The answer is no. And so the 13% that didn't get that right, if you guys are logged on here today, just know that the binomial theorem the binomial coefficient can never be equal to 0. You could have 0 factorial, but that does not equal 0. So careful with that. 100% on the next one. If we have to rationalize the denominator with an expression with a radical in the denominator, what do? We multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate. Again, everybody got that right, so good. When solving a quotient inequality, what must be true before we begin? 97% of you got this right. That's good. We must have 0 on one side of the inequality. 97% got the next one right. What do we know about the slope of parallel lines? They're the same. Then 92%, what do we know about the slope of perpendicular lines? They're the negative reciprocal of each other. 95% got right. If an equation of a circle is not in standard form, which of the following methods would we use to get it into standard form? We're going to complete the square. That will get us into standard form. And then the last concept question, which the following are elementary row operations can we use to solve a system of three equations? We can switch any rows. We can multiply any row by a non-zero constant, or we can add the multiple of one row to another. Again, 97% of you guys got that right, so good job there. So as you heard, there's a lot of 90+ percentages, so maybe not too many questions there, but do you guys have any questions on any of that before we move on? Okay, so the first calculation question we had, it was a multiple choice, and we wanted to simplify square root of 32 minus square root of 18. So everybody got this one correct, so I'm not going to go through it. Your answer should have been square root of 2. Well, it was. That's what you guys all got. And again, I'm going to give you guys these problems so that if for some reason you're not able to access them later, or worst case, if you can access them, but it doesn't give you what the right answer was, at least you'll have it now. So the answer would be square root of 2. Next one, 100% correct. Again, this was rationalize the denominator and simplify. And it was 6 over 2 minus square root of 2. Again, everybody got this one right. The answer should have been at the end 6 plus 3 root 2, I believe, was the correct answer. Yeah, I think so. That was that one. Next two questions were your composite functions. 92% got one of them right. 97 got the other right. I'm not really going to go through those. Again, those you can just do for practice. You had some ticket out the doors like that. So the next one, 87%, we wanted to know 5x to the third minus 3x squared minus 4x plus 12. You were given 5 different factors, and it said which of the following are a factor. So this is what? This is factor by grouping, the 4 terms. You guys all got that right. So if I pull out an x squared, I get x minus 3. I want the same thing over here. So I need to take out a negative 4. So then I pull out the x minus 3, leaves me with x squared minus 4. Two terms with a minus sign and an x squared, difference of squares. So this is x plus 2, x minus 2 with the x minus 3. So if this thing had said factor this, this would have been your final answer. If this had a 0 and said solve this, well, then you would use zero property rule on all these guys. But instead, it just said which of the following is a factor, and the only one on the list was this guy, the x minus 2. So that would have been your answer for that one. Any questions on that? Okay. Next problem was our circle and radius. So you guys had x squared plus y squared minus 4y minus 16 is 0. So 90% of you were able to figure out the center. The center for this one is 0, 2. And the radius is 2 root 5. And 95% of you got the radius correct. So that's that problem there. Again, on these ones where it's like 90% plus got it right, I'm not really going to go through the work of it. I don't really want to waste your guys' time. But if you do have a question, say you were the one person that got it wrong, that's fine. Just send me an email saying, hey, I don't get this, you know, how would we work it out? And I can try and help you that way. Or if we have to do like the WebEx or something, we can always try that. All right, next problem. So you guys are getting good at these, both you and the class before you. It was our compound fraction. So you guys had 97%. I think the other class had like 100% maybe on this one. So it's 1 over x minus 1 minus 1 over x plus 1 all over 1 over x plus 1 plus 1 over x minus 1. Okay, good to have you. So just quickly, all I'm doing is kind of going through the exam. We're up to the multiple choice questions right now. If there's any that you had a trouble on in the previous problems before this, you can always go back and rewatch the video. It'll be on YouTube, so you should be able to watch it later if you need to. Again, 97% of you guys got this right. The answer should have been 1 over x. So moving on to the next one. All right, so the next one, it tells me that only 79% got it right. I think more of you got it right than that. The issue, I think, was the formatting or entering in your answer correctly. So you're supposed to solve this quadratic. So when you can't factor this, so you need to use quadratic formula. And when you do, you get -1 plus or minus the square root of 2. So one thing to be careful of, just like on WebAssign, is read what the question is asking, how you should enter your answer. And so it says in the question, enter your smallest answer first. And so a lot of you, after the exam was over, you were sending me an email saying, I thought I had this right. Why didn't I get it right? And what you had was -1 plus SQRT2 and -1 minus SQRT2. So yes, these are the correct answers, but they're not entered into the correct box. And that's why it was deducting the points from you. So be careful. If it says enter the smallest answer first, put the smallest answer in first. Put the minus here and put the plus in the second box. If you're not sure, that is the type of situation where you need to email me. Before you click submit, do a screenshot and say, I think I have this right. I think it's formatted right. Can you just verify that I have it formatted right before I hit submit. I don't want to, hit submit and get it wrong because I don't have it in the correct format. So especially for exam 3 in the final exam where you only get one attempt, if you're not sure, send me an email, because once you hit submit, it's too late. You've already entered the answers in. So, and again, on the next exams, a question like this will probably be decimal places. So enter your answer to 2 decimal places, something like that. All right. The next question, 85. Let's see, it was the perpendicular line. So 85% had the slope given, 79 the perpendicular slope, and then only 62% the final equation. So let's look at this one. So the equation that you were given is 2x minus y plus 3 is equal to 0. So if we want to know the slope, we want to know what number is in front of x. So if I subtract 2x and subtract 3 from both sides, I get negative y is negative 2x minus 3. Put this in y equals mx plus b form. Divide everything by negative 1. I get y is equal to 2x plus 3. So the first box on this question said, what's the slope of the given line? And that value is just the number in front of x. So a bunch of you were putting in 2x. 2x is not the slope of the given line. 2 is the slope of the given line. X is the variable that's going to change on depending what value I pick for it. So that was the first answer. Then it asked, what's the slope of the perpendicular line? So it's the negative reciprocal. So instead of 2 over 1, it's 1 over 2. And instead of positive, it becomes negative. So that's the answer for the second part. And then lastly, it wants the equation of the perpendicular line in slope y equals mx plus b form. And we are going through the point 1, negative 1. So point slope formula, we have y minus negative 1 is our slope, negative 1/2, x minus 1. So this is y plus 1, distribute your negative half, so minus 1/2 x plus 1/2. And then subtract 1 from both sides. You get y equals negative 1/2 x minus 1/2. So the answer you would enter, because of the formatting, would be negative 1/2x minus 1/2. It's that funny formatting, but. So any question on any part of that? Like I said, only about 62% got to this point. Again, some of it was formatting. Some people had it in general form, etc. So the problem specified, write your answer in y equals mx plus b form. Next question was difference quotient. So you needed to find f of a plus h, and then f of a, and then the difference quotient. So first off, our function is 4 minus 3x. So f of a plus h, we're just going to plug in a plus h anywhere we have an x. And then simplify it. So 4, distribute the negative 3, so minus 3a minus 3h. That would be your answer for f of a plus h. Then f of a, we just plug in an a anywhere we have an x. So 4 minus 3a. That's the second answer. Then lastly is, what was the difference quotient? So it's what? It's f of a plus h. So 4 minus 3a minus 3h minus f of a 4 minus 3a all over h. So the 4's cancel out, the 3a's cancel out. So left with negative 3h over h. And now the h's cancel out. So your final answer for what is the difference quotient should have just been negative 3. Any questions on that one before I continue? Okay. So the next one was the system of 3 equations, and 97% got this one correct. So either A, you guys finally know how to do these, or B, you can go online somewhere and plug these in and get the right answer. So, okay, I'll go back and look at your answers, Daryl. Maybe send me an email just to remind me, and I'll go back in and I'll check your numbers as well. So, but anyways, so the system of 3 equations here. So you have 2x plus 2y minus 3z is negative 20. X minus y minus 2z is negative 6, and 3x plus y minus z is negative 10. So again, pretty much everybody got these right. So I think the answer is, so x is negative 1, y is negative 3, z is positive 4. So again, maybe for now you just did this so you have it, but maybe write it down in your notebook. That way for exam 3 or for the final exam, if you need another one to practice, because I know a lot of you guys kept asking me, can you give me a problem to practice? So here you go. Here's another one you can practice later on. All right, then good old number 30, the issue with this guy. So, so let me talk about your scores. I did post about it on Canvas, but I'll mention it here as well. So I did go back because of this problem, and for some reason it wasn't allowing me, it was letting me change it, but then it wasn't changing the exam. So maybe because some people had already started it, maybe it wouldn't let me change it. I don't know. But for some reason it wouldn't let you put a final answer into that answer box. So whatever score you had, let's say you got a 85. The actual score you ended up with was an 87, because I went back and gave everybody the 2 points that the system was taking off here. In addition, if you did the insurance policy after exam 1, that was worth 5 points. Add that to your score as well. So if you had an 85, add the 2 points, that's an 87. Add the extra 5, 92. So you actually ended up with a 92 on the exam instead. Now the max score you can get is 100. So if you got a 98 and then I add the 2 points back and you got 100 and you did the extra credit, you don't get an 105, you still just get 100. So hopefully you're still happy with your 100 anyhow, which is probably better. You want 100 on your own, not because I'm giving you 5 extra points. So, all right, but this guy, this was our quotient inequality. We have 2x plus 1 over x minus 2 is less than or equal to 1. As you guys all knew from the concept question, I can't have a 1 here. I have to bring it over. So if I subtract 1 from both sides, now I need to convert this into a fraction so that I can combine the terms together. So this just becomes x minus 2 over x minus 2. So simplify this. 2x minus x is x. 1 minus a negative 2 is like 1 plus 2, which is 3. So x plus 3 is what I end up with in the numerator, x minus 2 in the denominator. This whole thing is less than or equal to 0. So now, this is all I'm worried about the rest of the problem. I don't care about any of this stuff above. This is all I'm concerned with. The next thing I need to do is what? Figure out my breakpoints. So I want to set both of these equal to 0. So I get x is negative 3 and x is equal to 2. So on the exam, the first part of this that you had to fill in, it said, what are the breakpoints? So your answer should have just been in the first box, negative 3. And the answer in the second box should have been 2. That was it. No brackets, no parentheses, no infinities, nothing like that. Just that, negative 3 and 2. So again, I know that caused a little bit of confusion for some people. Some of you emailed, which is good. That's what you should do. Like, wait, am I putting the right thing into the box here? And for those of you that sent it to me, I'm like, no, don't put the bracket and don't put the parentheses. I don't want you getting it wrong because you're not sure what you're supposed to be putting in. This was it. What's my breakpoints? Negative 3 and 2. So you can either build the table or you can do the number line. So if I do this, I need some test points. So let's say negative 5, 0, and positive 5. So then go back to my ratio here. If I plug in my test point, negative 5 minus 3, that's a negative number. Negative 5 minus 2, that's a negative number. Negative divided by negative is positive. Plug in 0. 0 plus 3, that's a positive number. 0 minus 2, that's a negative number. Positive divided by negative is negative. So that interval is negative. And then last interval, plug in 5. 5 plus 3, that's positive. 5 minus 2, that's positive. Positive divided by positive is a positive number. So these are all the intervals. Now I have to go back and figure out, okay, which interval do I want? Do I want the positive intervals or do I want the negative? Well, because I'm looking for when the inequality is less than or equal to 0. Less than 0 is a negative number, so I want that interval there. So that interval is negative 3 to 2. And I have to test the endpoints. So if I plug in negative 3, I get 0 divided by negative 5, that's 0. 0 less than or equal to 0, that's true. So negative 3 can be included. So in the last box, your answer, this is what I would have wanted, but of course you weren't allowed, you weren't able to enter it in. And then 2, well, 2 gives me a 0 in the denominator. I can't have that, so it gets a parenthesis. So that would have been your final answer. So your breakpoints would have been these two values. Your final answer would have been that guy there. So any questions on that before we move on? All right. Next question was our domain problem. You guys did fairly well on this one, over 80% on all the different parts. 80% correct. So the first one, we wanted to know the domain for square root of x minus 3. So that means what? X minus 3 has to be greater than or equal to 0. So x is greater than or equal to 3. So on a number line, it's a closed circle, everything going to infinity. Get my head out of the way there. The second part, you have 1 over x squared minus 7x minus 8. So our concern here is when is the denominator going to be 0? So if I factor this, I get x minus 8, x plus 1. So that means x minus 8 is 0, x plus 1 is 0. So x is 8, x is negative 1. So it can be anything. So this one, in interval notation is what? 3 up to infinity. The second part can be anything but -1 and 8. So open circles at both. So in interval notation, I have negative infinity up to -1, union -1 to 8, union 8 up to infinity. And then the last part of this problem was just the combination of the the 2. So square root of x minus 3 over x squared minus 7x minus 8. So it's the overlap of these two sets. So the first one is 3, closed circle, everything to the right. The second one is -1 and 8, open circles. So the overlap is where? It starts at 3, goes up to 8. I have to skip 8, and then goes on to infinity. And 3 is included in both, so it gets a bracket. So that would have been your answer for the third part. So any questions on that? Again, you had 82%, 77, and then 87. So you guys did fairly well on that one. All right, so last but not least, our word problem, the interest problem. Unfortunately, only 56% got this one correct. So for this one, we have that an investor invests $1,000. Part of it is at 5%. The remainder is at 10%. And the question is, how much at 5%? So the total interest at the end of the first year is $80. So let's go ahead and we'll use our boxes like I had showed you guys that one day. That'll help us figure out where the values go in the table. This is investment number 1. This is investment number 2. We put them both into an account so that we end up with our total investment at the end. So investment number 1 is what? Well, we don't know how much it is, so we'll call that X. And it's at 5%. The second investment, and again, if anywhere along the way you guys have a question, just hit the exclamation points. The second one, I don't know how much that one is either, so I can call that Y. And that one is at 10%. And then, sorry, let me close this down here. Okay. The total amount is what? Well, the total amount itself is 1,000. We don't know the percentage at the end that we want, but we do know what? We know that the total interest is going to be $80. So now if I use the table, so that'll help me generate the equations. The first one is what? It's X amount at 5%, which is 0.05. So multiply across, you have 0.05x. The second investment, I don't know how much, so it's Y. 10% is 0.1. Multiply across, 0.1y. And then lastly, total, well, the amount is 1,000. I don't really care what the percentage ends up being because I know at the end the total interest is $80. So now I have 2 unknowns, so I need 2 equations. So I'm going to use the first column and the second. First and the third. So I get x plus y is 1,000, and 0.05x plus 0.1y is equal to 80. So you guys get to use a calculator. If you want to do this one with a calculator, that's fine. If you're doing it without the calculator and you want to get rid of the decimals here, I can multiply everything by 100. That'll move the decimal place over 2 spots. So I get what? 5x plus 10y equals 8,000. So it was here, move it 2 places over. I got to add 2 zeros. Then you can do a variety of stuff. You can do substitution. You can do elimination. So let's say I do elimination. Now, what am I looking for here? I'm looking how much at 5%. 5% is my x variable. So I want to keep the x. So what I'm going to do instead is multiply this whole row by -10. That way the y's will cancel out. So I get what? -10x minus 10y equals -10,000. So again, I'm using elimination here. Multiply the first row by -10. That way the y values are opposites. So when I add them down, they cancel out. And I just get -5x is equal to -2,000. So divide both sides by -5. Tells me that x, the amount at 5%, is $400. And again, as far as the formatting, don't put the $sign there. It's just 400. That's all you needed. You didn't need the $sign. If you weren't sure, email me. Hey, on the last question, I know the answer is $400. Do I need the $sign symbol or just the number 400 itself? That's really about it. Any questions on the exam? Again, as far as Wednesday goes, so you guys will dial back in here and we'll go through section 2.7 and section 3.7. So if you do have questions on those, on Canvas, I will start a discussion thread, 2.7, 3.7 questions. And just put a screenshot of which ones you need help on. That way I know for Wednesday that those are the numbers that you guys have so that we're working the same problem for you. So, otherwise, if there's no other questions, I will let you guys go for today. Have a good night. Stay safe. And if you do have other questions that weren't covered, just shoot me an email or put it on the discussion board and I can answer it there. Otherwise, you guys have a good night, and we'll see you on Wednesday.